Hello, hello, hello.
Hello. Hello.
Hello. By when people are starting to log on. Oh, there's Todd. And we're waiting for David and Carmen may or may not be joining us tonight. I believe that's David. I'll tell you what, why don't we get started? First of all, welcome back. It's been 2 months since we've convened. Yeah, this is the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee meeting, Thursday, November 18th. I've already taken roll call.
Hi, Matthew. David, I'm on here now too.
Yeah, I think I remember that unique name from our last meeting.
I can't get rid of it. I don't know what's where it comes from. Sorry.
I think you just you right click your screen and it gives you the option of renaming.
All right.
But anyway, we're being recorded, so let's move along. I guess the first item is item number 2 on the agenda is to approve the minutes from September. Did anybody have any comments or questions? Okay, well, seeing none.
I will move approval of the minutes.
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, and I guess no one opposed. All right, so next item is to go over the ongoing CIP projects that we have, and I'm going to compile on the fly a couple of summaries from 2 staff. The first project is a downtown pedestrian improvements project. It was a combination of the bike box that you see at Campbell Railway that has long been completed, but it also included these rectangular rapid flashing beacon systems that we wanted to install, one system on each loop street. The system at Orchard City and Orchard City and 2nd Street was installed just before our last BPAC meeting. So you should be familiar with that one. It's where Orchard City stops curving and becomes a tangent, straight portion of roadway. So that was a good addition because it's a challenging intersection to see pedestrians stepping off the curb, especially from the north side of Orchard City. The other beacon system that was scheduled is at Civic Center and 2nd Street, next to the parking garage. And actually, it's across the street. We were planning to have the beacon system for the crosswalk crossing the east leg of Civic Center Drive. We're this close to getting that installed. We have the equipment already ordered, and we have it in our yard. And then it's just a matter of deciding some details regarding the crosswalk that doesn't have the beacon, whether to remove or not.
Get out now.
But in any case, the installation of that beacon, it's imminent. The next project is the Harriet Avenue sidewalk project. That's the Harriet Avenue that's close to Westmont High School, south of Westmont Avenue. And the updates are that the city council approved the plan specs November 2nd. The next update is that staff is proceeding to seek authorization from Caltrans to proceed with the construction of the project. And the anticipated bid will be in April of 2022, and that construction would start in September of 2022. So let's say fall of next year. And then finally, there is some utility relocation work involving PG&E on Harriet Avenue. Are there any questions thus far? I'll tell you what, before we move on, if you're not speaking, could you mute yourself? That would cut out some of the background noise. Okay, thanks. The third project to update you on was the fiscal year 21 pavement maintenance project. That was the project that installed the sharrows on Latimer Avenue. And that project is pretty much completed, and the council will be asked to accept the improvements in January of next year. So things are moving along quite well, and we'll probably remove, we may not, remove this project from next meeting's agenda. There's also a fiscal year 22 annual pavement maintenance project that includes the installation of sharrows on West Parr Avenue. So half the street is in Campbell, half is in Los Gatos. We've already mapped out locations for the sharrows, and maybe next meeting we should show you the locations. But essentially, it's West Parr Avenue between Winchester and Pollard Road, and the maximum spacing for sharrows is 250 feet. And so depending on where the cross streets are located, we just kind of have to move the sharrows up or down the street to keep them out of being in the middle of an intersection. But the preliminary layout has been shared with Town of Los Gatos staff. So the design process is underway, and then once it's ready to be shared, then we can share it with you. Making a note to myself to share at the next meeting. Okay. West Parr. The next item is really the Measure B Bicycle and Pedestrian Education and Encouragement program project. We have accumulated, I believe, around 3 or 4 fiscal years worth of Measure B allocations. And we decided to use these funds, which are not meant for construction type projects, but more for education and encouragement, for 2 concepts. One was a citywide bike map, and the other is taking 2 schools. We were envisioning Rosemary Elementary School and Capri Elementary School. And this is the progress that we've made. Thanks to BPAC for the ideas that were shared previously. It really opened my eyes, at least, of how things have changed. Where I started out in the world of fold-out maps. I still have AAA maps in my car, but it looks like everything is online now. And if anything, I got some feedback from City of San Jose. They don't provide fold-out hard copy maps because they're constantly changing their bikeways and adding facilities such that their hard copies become outdated very quickly. So they're using their website to share that kind of information. It was interesting in sitting in on, it was a Safe Routes to School Providers Working Group meeting. And one of the participants mentioned that if you do everything online, it may not be accessible to people who don't have a computer. So it might be good to still have some means of being able to print something to provide for users. But so that was kind of helpful as well. We were working with a GIS consultant to prepare GIS maps that show our current bikeways and future bikeways. I'm going to talk a little bit more about it with item number 5 on the agenda. But the second half of this project is the Safe Routes to School maps. And I talked to San Jose's Safe Routes to School program manager, Ann Jasper, and she was very, very helpful in providing contacts and different company names and what services they provide, as well as what to look for in the end product. You want the map to be kind of kid friendly, not like a real sterile map that maybe just an engineer would understand. And there was some confusion about if there's this oddity where if the school is physically within the city limits of Campbell, but it has a mailing address in San Jose, under whose purview does that Safe Routes to School mapping fall under? San Jose or Campbell? And what we learned just from talking to Anne over at San Jose is she was under the impression that Rosemary School was under San Jose's jurisdiction. But when I check our GIS map and the mailing address, they're both in Campbell. So that was enlightening, enlightening for them. And so we're going to continue with the understanding that we would be taking on Rosemary Elementary School. But let's say the learning curve has been steep, but we have made some progress. And Todd and I have talked envisioning hiring a consultant who has these capabilities, and we're making progress. Okay, any other questions?
I got a question about that. I just don't know how much funding is available or what this would cost. But if you're already mapping, like, could they also conduct a walk audit at the same time, and then you would have that information for the future? Like, is that something that consultant would probably be capable of doing both items? If funding's available, of course. Otherwise, only maps.
Okay, transparency. Measure B is all about transparency. So there's $119,000 accumulated because remember early on with Measure B, the revenues were from the sales tax was being accumulated, but it wasn't being distributed because of a lawsuit. So every year, some of that revenue was being accumulated. Usually we would only get about a $30,000 allocation per year. Well, 4 years have accumulated, so now we've got $119,000. We haven't mapped out yet how much it will cost, but something I did think about was we would want the consultant to do a lot of this legwork. We were thinking of a task like meeting with the parents, mapping out after we find out where the drop-off points are, where the parents drop off the kids and then the kids walk the rest of the way to the school, is that the consultant would then walk that route and find out what the deficiencies are. So in a way, it is kind of like an audit, but it might be good to put those words in, let's say, a request for a qualification so that the consultant knows exactly what we're looking for. Because I also would want the consultant to do some kind of before and after measure to see how much walking or biking was happening before, and then maybe after these safe routes to school maps are distributed to parents. But yeah, that's a good idea. We can always use more means to spend the money that's available.
Matthew, I was just a little confused. You said you were working with a consultant to prepare something, and then you later said something that made it sound like you were talking with Todd about possibly getting a consultant. So it wasn't clear to me what the status was there.
Okay. At first I was mentioning that I talked to Ann Jasper. She's a San Jose staff member, a program manager for their Safe Routes to School program. She had passed along to me some players or names of consultants in the industry and what types of services they typically provide. So she's giving me some background of what firms are available and or that she's used or she's heard other cities have used. We haven't procured any consultant services yet. We haven't gotten that far along. So that's in the near future. Okay. In any case, I will summarize by saying it's good to make some progress after many years of not sure of what we're going to do. Besides that 119,000, we have 2 other fiscal years worth of allocation that have been allocated already. So there's funding to come in future years. And the funding has a 3-year life. You need to use it within 3 fiscal years, or at least demonstrate to VTA that you're spending the money as you go. They don't want you to continue to accumulate and not spend and not make any progress. If you do accumulate, but it's because you're trying to bank in order to afford something that costs a lot, at least that's a reason that can be given to the VTA, but that's not our case. Okay, the next item is item number 4, Campbell PDA enhancements, 1 Bay Area grant, and the project deals with downtown pedestrian improvements. Most of the VPAC members here are joined in 2016 or later, so it's a little bit after or during or after. There was a call for projects for the second cycle of 1 Bay Area grants. We had applied for a grant to provide pedestrian enhancements in the downtown area. It was a laundry list of different project components dealing with bulb outs at corners along the loop streets, Civic Center Drive, at 2nd Street and at 3rd Street. The flashing beacon systems that I mentioned earlier. Sidewalk improvements on Orchard City Drive between Central Avenue and the light rail station, and so on. What happened was we were not awarded the grant. So that was back in 2016, and I guess that was the end of the grant. But in the meantime, then we continued to move forward with making improvements to pedestrian facilities in the meantime. And that included the bike box, the flashing beacon systems that we talked about. But what happened was earlier this year, VTA approached the city and said that there were some funds available because some of the agencies that were awarded grant funds were not delivering their projects, and they had to forfeit their grants and return it back to VTA. And long story short, we were able to secure funds for that Campbell PDA, or Priority Development Area, enhancement project for the design phase only. But it would have been humanly impossible for us to complete the construction phase within the time limit. The cycle to One Bay Area grant funds have to be obligated obligated to the agency by January of 2023. For us to be eligible, we'd have to be ready for construction by that time, and there just isn't enough time. But in any case, it's good news because we can move forward with the design phase of, it's a slightly different scope of work than what we had proposed in 2016, because we've made some progress. So that some of the components of the project that was originally proposed have already been completed. And what we suggested to VTA was, could we substitute for about approximately the same dollar value in terms of the design phase, a different component of dealing with pedestrian improvements. These improvements are documented in a study. You might have heard us over the years refer to what's called the Tipsy Study. Tipsy is kind of a cute short acronym. Transportation Improvement Plan, TIP, for Campbell PDA, for Campbell's Priority Development Area, which is pretty much our historic downtown and areas east of Railway. It's our central redevelopment area. So we propose to substitute those components that we had already constructed or were ready to construct with, one of the components is a reconfiguration of the intersection at Civic Center Drive and Harrison Avenue. And it might be helpful if I share a graphic. First, I need to open up the folder, and then I'll share with you what we have in mind. And I'm going to share my screen, which I seem to do at every meeting. Okay, this is the Tipsy study, the final report. And I'm going to scroll really fast to find a graphic. Here is the parking lot for the library. This is Civic Center Drive, the one-way street, loop street that goes through the downtown. Under existing conditions, making a right turn from Civic Center Drive onto Harrison Avenue in front of the library, it's a pretty flat curve, and it leads to high speeds. I remember, Mark, at the last meeting, you mentioned that you feel like you're being tailgated because people are flying around the corner and driving up behind you. The idea is, try to zoom in here. to tighten this curve. So it forces people to just kind of drive normally, make a 90-degree turn. And at the same time, coming south on Harrison Avenue, you won't have to make that. It's like a pork chop island almost. You're turning your neck to be able to see back to make this right turn. Instead, it'll be like a 90-degree turn, like a normal intersection. So this is a concept drawing, very preliminary, prepared by the traffic consultant team that prepared this study. But the concept is to reconfigure this intersection, because the feedback that we got from the various stakeholders that were interviewed for this study was that this intersection is confusing to pedestrians. At one point, you're crossing at a signal. At another point, you've got an uncontrolled right turn. And so all you want to do is go from point A to point B, but you're encountering two different kinds of control, a signal on one half of the street, and then a yield controlled right turn on the other. So we're trying to make it a one intersection with a signal controlling the movements. So this got incorporated as part of the project. So I'm going to point out some of the components besides this concept. There really isn't a drawing. There isn't a drawing or rendition for this, but essentially there are two intersections here, Civic Center and Second, Civic Center and Third, where there's been some issues with traffic collisions and visibility of or misunderstanding of that Main Street traffic is not stop controlled. And there's a problem of side street traffic failing to yield, so that there's been broadside crashes here on 3rd Street as well as 2nd Street. So we're trying to rectify that. One of the issues we see is the crosswalk at 2nd Street is kind of set back far, so that motorists, when they stop, they may not be able to see completely oncoming traffic on Civic Center Drive. So we're proposing to move the crosswalk as well as the curb ramps on the south leg of 2nd Street, closer to the intersection. And on the north side, it's a strange design where driveways are sharing. Let's say the existing corner curb ramps are being used like driveways. This isn't the greatest. I'll tell you what, I will show you on Google Earth. This is the intersection of Civic Center Drive and 2nd Street. I had mentioned earlier that we were planning a flashing beacon system here. At the corner where this curb ramp is, it's as well as this corner, the curb ramps are also serving as driveways. And what we want to do is separate the driveway from the corner curb ramp. And one way we think that can be accomplished, but we need the help of consultant team to flesh it out more, is to have kind of like a curb bump out here and flatten this curve so that the driveway can continue to be, the alignment of the driveway could be moved so that the curb cut is out here, and then keep the corner curb ramp down here. So at least the two movements are separated. Probably something similar on this side. We have not designed it to full detail, but that's the concept that is floating in our heads here. I'm going to stop sharing this and move back to the Tipsy study, because So just bear in mind, there are improvements we're considering for 2nd Street and 3rd Street. There's also on the south, on the Orchard City Drive, a portion of the original grant application from 2016 was to install this sidewalk. We took that out of the 2021 concept. There wasn't as much of clamor for those improvements, but we are keeping these proposed improvements, let's say some of them on this page. This is the downtown Campbell Light Rail Station, and this is Orchard City Drive from Central Avenue to Railway Avenue. So the idea was to create a walking path that is clearer to pedestrians from the light rail station, to have sidewalk, kind of like a better delineation of the crosswalk here at this driveway, but also have replaced what right now it's a striped shoulder with diagonals. And they help to a certain extent to give pedestrians better visibility of oncoming traffic and vice versa, that traffic can see the pedestrians. But to make it more permanent, to bump out the curves and have sidewalk, and then introduce a flashing beacon system here at Orchard City and Central. So a lot of people who get off this train station want to walk to downtown Campbell or to City Hall. So there's some sidewalk improvements here and here. We are not doing this signalized crosswalk. That was included in the 2016 grant application, but we decided to pull that out. Yeah. So are there any questions? It's a lot of information, but it's kind of exciting. What we're hoping and what we've been told is, I'm going to stop sharing. By having the design funds and making progress, there will be a call for projects for the 3rd cycle of One Bay Area grant, which is going to be timed somewhere in the summer or fall of next year. And by making progress on the design phase, we'll be better positioned to show project readiness for the construction, for seeking construction funds through a One Bay Area grant. Okay. So the next one is item number 5 is the general plan update bikeways map. I had sent you a map, and I'm going to share my screen again so that we can all look at the same thing. I know it was kind of a short time for you to look at it, but I'll try to raise some questions that came to my mind. We tried to work with the GIS consultant to copy what the countywide bike plan shows, or VTA's bikeway map, because we provide input to them, and from what I recall, it was pretty accurate. They use some different nomenclature than we do, so I had to also make the bikeways and the legend consistent with our general plan and how we classify bikeways. So we don't use the term like bike boulevard, for example. It's pretty much it's class 1, class 2, class 3 bikeway. The bike path versus bike lanes versus bike routes. We really don't have class 4 in the city right now. But let me share my screen. I did receive a comment already from Carmen, actually. She noticed that over here in the southwest quadrant, she wondered why the Santa Mas Aquino Creek Trail wasn't shown. And frankly, that was an oversight on our part. I believe it was included, it was even included in our 2001 general plan bikeway map. But that's a note to myself to ask the consultant to add this Santa Mas Aquino Creek Trail to the map. And
So Matthew, I have a question, high level question. So what's the audience for this map?
it could be, and Todd, you can chime in here, but it could be anybody who wants to know the direction that the city's going, whether it's the developers or city staff who are trying to plan for future facilities or seek funding for or use whatever opportunities that arise. The whole idea of complete streets is to always be thinking about all different transportation modes at any phase of a project, during the planning phase, the design, construction, and also during maintenance. Use those times as opportunities to make improvements to your facilities, whether it's for pedestrians or for bicycles or for transit. So not sure if that's a good textbook answer, but that's what I see as being like a practical way of seeing
Okay,
who
good,
would use
good.
it.
That's good because, you know, there were some issues, but if people were going to use this as a way to plan bike routes, it would be different than if it's for what you. So this, we're showing what is Campbell done and what is it doing to provide biking facilities.
You know what, you're
Right.
you're asking a very good question, because there is some difference. The legend here, it's showing, this is something, yeah, you're right. We wouldn't necessarily show for a bikeway map, here are our proposed bikeways. That doesn't make sense because they want to know what's there now. But if people wanted to know where are the existing bikeways, but also where are you planning?
Yes. Okay.
And
That's good.
this provides some direction too to staff, because you don't just willy-nilly add facilities without an idea or a plan. There needs to be some basis behind decision-making and strategies. And I feel getting the feedback from the VPAC is very helpful, because I remember years ago, the question is, you're all familiar with Salmon Avenue, where Fry's Electronics used to be. Well, the question way back then was, what do you think about having a bikeway on Salmon Avenue? And the reaction at the time was, why? Why would anyone want to ride a bike on Salmon? It's not exactly a friendly route. It's kind of windy, and at the time it had a lot more, well, it still has truck traffic. But it's that kind of thing, is what makes sense for creating a network that's safe, that gets you where you want to go, connects to parks or schools. So here we are showing, this map is showing the bike paths, the bike lanes, the striped lanes, and then the bike routes, which are either sharrows or the green bike route signs. The dash line is for proposed bikeways. So that's another note to self, is I'm not sure, actually I'm pretty sure, for the Los Gatos Creek Trail, I don't think we need these branch, I think they're pretty much dirt paths that run through the percolation ponds behind the Dell Avenue. So that needs to be corrected. I'm gonna make a note to myself here. Delete per pond paths. That was not included as a comment to incorporate, so somehow it wound up.
Yeah, and they're not differentiated,
No,
paved or not. either.
in the 2001 general plan, all it showed was the paved paths, and then it should have been only this one path going down to Los Gatos. So all of this is questionable. This is the entrance from the county park. So it needs to be cleaned up.
Well, but there is paved path from Dell to take you over then where the bridge is, and it's paved all the way on to the overcrossing that goes over 17. You know, there's that on.
Here, oh, you're talking about here?
Well,
Mozart
from here,
Avenue?
yes, that's paved. That's paved all the way over to the main path that you just talked about. Plus,
What
there's
I'm saying is
those
paths like
things.
these.
Those are just dirt. Yeah.
Right. So we'll have to mark this up for a consultant. But you're right.
And that connection, remember we've talked before, that had to do with that development down there, the connection that brings you over to the main path is paved from Dell.
Over by Hacienda?
No,
No,
I
farther
think
down.
he's referring to the one next to the 1700 Dell project, Matthew.
Yes.
There's a paved spur trail connection. That's
Oh,
way to almost to the end of almost at that little bend on Dell where it goes from class 2 to class 3.
Yes.
right. We've been talking about that as a BPAC. We've been talking about how to create an entrance to that path. So yeah, you're right. It's right around here.
Yes. But there's interest there now, and it's paved, so you can get over to that path to take you across 17, all unpaved.
Okay. And this is not proposed. It's an existing overcrossing.
Yes.
So yeah. Okay. So that East Mozart Bridge exists. I want to finish with this. Just okay. Proposed bikeways are dashed. So what I want to do is kind of scan through the 4 different quadrants or so of the city, so that you might wonder, well, why is the solid line being shown for West Park Avenue? The general plan hopefully will be completed maybe by the end of next year, so that if we're planning to put in a bikeway on West Par next summer as part of our paving project, it'll be in place already. So it may be a little bit presumptuous or forward-looking, but sometimes you have to do that to, like, when you're publishing something, you have to think, what conditions be like when what you're preparing is ready to go. But so we're showing West Par, Dell Avenue. We put in that was improved in what, 2019 or so. So as well as East Hacienda. We are including what we call Old Harriet. I don't know how formal that name is, but it's the Harriet Avenue we were talking about earlier, the sidewalk project between Westmont Avenue. This is Westmont High School. That largely unimproved stretch of Harriet Avenue south of Westmont Avenue. We're putting in sidewalk on the west side. But we're also adding sharrows. So we're showing this as a proposed bikeway. You know, the more I think about it, our staff has to figure out it's a bikeway, but whether to show it as existing or proposed. But generally speaking, it is included as a bikeway. But I am going to make a note to myself about Harriet. So we are continuing to, these roadways and the status that's being proposed for Burroughs and Santa Moschino Road, that's the same as the current general plan that was published in 2001. So a lot of this, there really hasn't been a change in terms of the status of being a bikeway. We've made some progress in that Harriet Avenue is an existing bikeway. It's been constructed. And the same goes for streets that back in 2001 had not been completely completed, like Union Avenue was installed as a bike lane. It didn't have a bike lane back then. And I'm just trying to scan to see, are there any facilities that are different from the current general plan? One that jumps out to me is Kennedy Avenue and Railway Avenue is, I don't remember off the top of my head, but definitely though, because of developments within the past 5 years, there was a bike lane and sharrows that were installed as part of, associated with the development project that kind of changed the appearance of the east side of Railway Avenue. Now there are a lot of apartments and townhomes where there used to be a collection of light industrial type uses. But now it's very clear this is a pathway for bicyclists. And it's pretty useful because it runs by the light rail station and is a means of getting to like Campbell Park. We're continuing to show the downtown streets as potential bikeways. In fact, that One Bay Area grant design will include sharrows for Civic Center Drive as well as for Orchard City Drive. And this is the northern extent. So the fiscal year 21 paving project installed the sharrows on West Latimer Avenue right here. And someday soon, we were approached by City of San Jose regarding Santa Moschino Road. It's quite possible, and it's just a matter of focusing our attention to this stretch of Santa Moschino Road north of Campbell Avenue. The roadway width is wide enough to accommodate bike lane. It's just a matter of narrowing the lanes. It would be great if there were a paving project at the same time, then you could do everything at once. But if not, there's still a possibility of installing bike lanes in this stretch. As far as adding facilities, nothing really jumps out. This is a kind of like a new bikeway that was we installed, with the help of the BPAC in the past. Central Avenue, linking up with Grand Street and then down to First Street to link up with what had been a long-standing bike route on Rincon Avenue. I'm seeing that there's a gap here, the existing head-over crossing for Bucknell and Rincon. That this needs to be shown. Lee Avenue is a bike route. Bascom Avenue, there's for the Bascom Complete Streets study that one way or another, this stretch is going to be transformed. We need to show as a proposed bikeway. Bascom Avenue, south of Apricot, as proposed.
What about on Lee down to maybe Dry Creek? You know, the blue ends up north of Campbell.
Could you repeat that again?
Well, on Lee, the bike route doesn't go to the southern border of the city. Shouldn't it be continuous all the way to the border? The south, I think it's to Dry Creek.
You're correct. You're correct. Lee Avenue, the bike route does go all the way down to Dry Creek. Good catch. And that's from sort of like Montemar to Dry Creek. So this is Campbell Avenue east of Bascom. And
If the proposed bikeways are dotted, why is the city boundaries also dotted and the creek trail? Could it just like the proposed facilities be dotted and everything else is solid? That would kind of visually make more sense to me.
yeah, so city limit lines, proposed bikeways, and what was the other?
The
creek
Campbell
trail.
Creek Trail.
Oh, the creek trail, okay, yeah. The line work needs to be clarified. Yeah, I had in earlier drafts, yeah, it was, I needed more contrast in the colors to make it more visible. So at least we got it to this state. That's a good point, though. I know they're trying to use different line patterns. You know, the long dash, two short dashes, then long dash, they're using for a city limit line. But the more you zoom back, it may not be as easy to differentiate, especially if this were a hard copy. So here's a line, then circle, circle, line. But even so, yeah, we'll give them that feedback. I'll tell you what, since you only received this recently, I'll let you take a look at it on your own time, and then you can get back to me with any additional comments. Okay. Okay, the next item 6. I don't know, Todd, if you want to, I'll start, but then you can chime in. I'm running out of, I need to wet my whistle.
You need to breathe.
Okay. The city is, I guess, there was this state law that allowed us to be meeting online instead of in person for public meetings. Kind of putting aside in the near term certain Brown Act rules. But I guess that law has sunsetted, so that we're migrating back to in-person meetings, and that includes this body, the VPAC. And the plan is, since we're not going to be meeting until January, because we meet every other month, but the plan is to be meeting in person, but we would be live streaming also.
We would not be live streaming, we would be recording. We would be recording it though. So what Matthew has said is essentially correct. So we will not, this dispensation that we've been given at the state level to hold meetings basically, exclusively on Zoom is going away. However, the desire by the council to continue to hold hybrid meetings or to record the proceedings is going to remain in place. So even prior to the pandemic shutdown, we could have members of the council or any board and commission participate remotely, but their address of where they would be participating from would need to be posted on the actual meeting agenda. So it wasn't uncommon once upon a time to hold a council meeting and you'd have 4 council members in the chambers, and maybe one council meeting was off at the League of California Cities Conference at whatever city that you like, and they would have to post the address of their hotel where they would be either conference calling in or some sort of video conferencing in. So we're effectively going back to that model, which largely calls for in-person meetings, but it does make the allowance still for people to participate remotely. Now, combine that with the fact that we'll be recording meetings means that we have to hold them in a venue where we have the ability to do that. And so for our council and planning commission, as an example, our council chambers is set up to do that. Where we have historically hosted the BPAC in the Public Works Conference Room, we are not set up to do that. So the best location for us moving forward may be to hold the BPAC meetings in what we call the Deach Conference Room, which is a slightly larger conference room. It's located in the city manager's area of City Hall. So you'd be coming to the same address, although some of you have never been here for an in-person meeting. So you'd get reacquainted with City Hall, and we would host the meeting there. And we have a room, a single camera that's over the video screen. So you wouldn't each have your own, you wouldn't each have to bring your own laptop. We would effectively sit at a large conference table, and the discussion would be recorded, and then we could archive the meeting at its conclusion. We would not be required to live stream any longer. I think we'll only be live streaming council and planning commission from this point forward. So that is what we're looking at doing for the January meeting going forward. But if things change in the interim, we'll certainly keep you posted. But we did want you to be prepared that when you see the agenda for the next upcoming meeting, it will very likely have an in-person location requirement, so to speak. So, and while we can allow for some level of remote participation, we do have to have an in-person quorum for it to be considered an official meeting. So of the 5 seats that we have, we would need to have 3 members in person, or we could not hold it as an official meeting. So that means when we have when we have five commission members, we could have up to 2 participating remotely. So if it gets to that point, we may have to have some discussion prior to the meeting to work out logistics, but that is most likely where we're headed for the January 20th meeting.
Are there any questions? I have a question which will segue to our next item. If we are down to 4 people that would still require a 3-person quorum.
That is correct. And there is your segue, Matthew.
Find that little opening and go right through it. Okay, you may have noticed in the past few months that we've needed a substitute to attend our VTA BPAC meetings. And thanks, David, for volunteering. Those are very long meetings. But what's happening is, how many people have heard of SQUIM? All right, yeah. I guess it's a city up in Washington, state of Washington. Yeah, Carmen Lina, who's
Hi, Matthew. Can you hear me?
hey, Carmen, there you are.
Well, I dialed in a little bit ago, but my iPad's not working very good, but I've heard of SQUIM.
Oh yeah, well, tell us a little bit about it.
Well,
We're being
SQUIM
recorded, by the way.
Yeah, SQUIM is in the Olympic Peninsula. It's about 2 hours west of Seattle. And my husband and I have bought a house that is about 100 yards from the ocean, and we can see Vancouver Island, and we will be moving up here in the next 2 to 4 months. So that's why I'm going to have to resign from the BPAC. And I've really enjoyed my time on it, and I hope I haven't been too much of a problem, but that's what's kind of going on. So I'm hoping somebody will step up and take the VTA BPAC, and that you'll be able to find a good replacement for me.
Yeah, Todd, you can chime in, but yeah, I'd like to express our appreciation, Carmen, for your participation and really good feedback that you've given us over the years.
Yes, I would agree with Matthew on that. So thank you very much, Carmen, for all your participation, and congratulations on your move. It's good for you. It's maybe not so good for us, but as you say, we'll continue, and we'll need to fill some roles here. So we will have a vacancy here very shortly that we'll need to do some sort of recruitment for. And then we'll need to do some kind of reassigning of chair, vice chair, which we do annually anyway. So the timing on that will kind of work out with what we normally do. And then we will need a longer term VTA BPAC representative as well, as Matthew says. So there's a few things that we need to work out. We don't have to work the chair and vice chair out this evening, but it'd be good to see if we can work, at least discuss the VTA BPAC representation.
Right. So there's going to be, so there's 2 tracks or 2 processes for Campbell's BPAC. Carmen has been serving as the chair and David as the vice chair. So it's a matter of filling that chair position, and if David steps up to be the chair, who would like to be serving as the vice chair, just to give a flavor of what the chair or vice chair does. I guess the vice chair serves if the chair is absent. The chairperson, it helps out, like if we need letters of support, but also there are times of volunteering where someone from each commission or committee in the city is asked to represent that body as part of, let's give an example, the mayor's roundtable. So we've had someone from the BPAC sit in and then be able to participate, but also bring back to this group what was discussed. And we've been tapping David to do that. I think most recently, I think there was a roundtable planned. I don't know if it happened yet.
Tomorrow night.
Oh, great. Okay. Well, have fun. Wow, on a Friday night. Huh. Okay. So it's less formal, chair, vice chair. If you want time, that's fine. You think about it. The other is filling that vacancy for the VTA BPAC. It is something that we nominate somebody and we write a letter and submit it to the VTA board secretary. So it's a little bit more, I wouldn't say formal, but it's more bureaucratic. It's not as simple as sending somebody. They have to be kind of identified and recognized. And I think in this case, whoever we send is filling the vacancy for the remainder of the term, which I think it ends August or something like that of next year. I don't remember. And then I believe the person can continue with another term if the person's in good standing and there's no objection on the part of the person who has been filling in too. They have to be a willing participant. But anyway, keep that in mind. Because they're moving pieces. So item number 7 is the VTA BPAC. Do we have a report on what happened?
Yeah, I have a verbal report here and I can provide something brief in writing if need be as well. They released a RFP for the Bascom Corridor Complete Street Study. You know, there will be some further discussion of that. The chair reported on legislation, 2 things. Maybe of most interest is that there was and maybe you've talked about this, or you guys certainly know about this at the city, that they changed the regulations as far as how cities can set speed limits.
Right.
And so that there's more latitude for the cities to do things, I guess, irrespective of existing speed. Is that right?
Well, for a while, it was more stringent. You can't just round up or round down to a 5 mile per hour increment. You had to round to the nearest. From what you record as the 85th percentile speed, you had to round to the nearest 5 mile per hour increment. This law, which AB something, I forget Assembly Bill number it is, 43, I think. It takes us a step back to how the rules used to be. It allows you to round down if you want.
Okay. There was a motion to move approval of the CMP, which passed. I can't speak to everything that's in that, but that's the VTA Congestion Management Program. Quite a bit of discussion about BART Phase 2, including some discussion about bike parking at the stations. They will have both secured parking, you know, which could be in a bike room or bike lockers, as well as some just bike racks. And there was discussion about the stations, Diridon and Santa Clara, that they're not yet that integrated with the neighborhoods, but there'll be some additional studies about, you know, focusing on the station area plans, both those places. There was a discussion about the cost of BART and the schedule, but we don't need to go there. They nominated members for their chair and vice chair. They'll be voting at the next meeting. But this chair looks like it's likely to be Stacy Banerjee. I forget where she's from, and there was 2 nominees for vice chair. And they formed a wayfinding subcommittee, which is to help people find their way to, you know, transit facilities, and basically it's signage and so on. I thought it was interesting from Gilroy, there was a mention that city has actually hired a part-time Safe Routes to School coordinator. Also, there was a reference to Saratoga getting some funding through the infrastructure bill to put in a trail from the downtown core there out to Hakone Gardens area. $1.5 million somebody stuck in there for them. That concludes my report.
Well done. By the way, it was Assembly Bill 43. All right.
Any comments, further comments on that? I mean, is that something that the city sees as significant?
We are participating in that Bascom Complete Streets project, although our segment of Bascom Avenue that's in the project scope is Hamilton Avenue and north of Hamilton. So it's not that big a segment. It does include only funds for the design phase. So there's no construction yet. We are, I believe, well, we might, I don't remember, Tom might remember if we're providing a local match or not. Somebody tells me in our kickoff meeting with San Jose staff, they might have.
I don't think we are. I don't think we're providing a monetary match other than maybe staff resources.
That sounds very familiar. Okay. One of the components that draws our attention is that there's a possibility that San Jose's paving project in the meantime might incorporate some of that, the vision of that Bascom Complete Streets study, which was to have a lane reduction on Bascom Avenue further north. I think it's north of Southwest Expressway, that area. Thankfully, and hopefully, it doesn't result in impacts like a queuing to back up to Hamilton Avenue. It shouldn't happen, but it's something we'll keep an eye on during the design phase. That is good that, David, that you mentioned that speed limit rule, although we just went through a citywide study of our speed surveys last year. So we're not going to have to deal with that for another 5 years. But a colleague of mine had contacted me pretty recently about this this law. So if I hadn't heard from him, I would have heard it from you. So one way or another, I would have been kept abreast of this. But other than that, the other items like BART doesn't really affect Campbell much for. Okay. Thanks again, David. Around the table, comments or discussion. Did anybody have any anything to share?
The new trees in the Campbell Park, they look great. So that path and trees, excellent.
Thank you.
That's good to hear. By the way, since this is a BPAC, pedestrian advisory committee, I guess a little bit of an improvement is going on next to the library as far as there's sidewalk on Civic Center Drive. There's some kind of like a steepness to the sidewalk because of tree roots. And in the recent, like last week or so, I guess the sidewalk segment was removed and kind of flattened. So that helps out. I think the concrete is still curing though.
I think the forms are coming off that one tomorrow, so that will be open. And yeah, it's effectively now got that entire grade along the library under 5%. Because if you remember before, with all the tree root issues, we had areas out there that where it was kind of up and down, so not really ADA compliant. And we're doing that in advance of the library renovation project so that the library can now contour to the elevations of the new pathway. So we've got an ADA compliant walkway, and hopefully the library project will kind of, take advantage of that. And it helps because it's right adjacent to a transit stop as well. So it's kind of important to make sure those are compliant.
So hopefully nobody's like walked through the wet concrete. You won't see like little paw prints of squirrels. Or... Okay, is there anything else?
Nothing else from you, Carmen? Is this your last meeting?
Yeah, nothing else from me. It is probably my last meeting, and but again, I'd like to thank everybody for being so friendly, and the Campbell staff is very good, and I'm sure that the BPAC will carry on, and Campbell is a much better place because of our help to make it bicycle and pedestrian friendly. Thank you.
Thank you for your leadership, Carmen.
Thanks, Carmen.
Our next scheduled meeting is January 20th. January 20th, which is a Thursday, 5 p.m. Mark your calendars. So if there are no other comments, I guess the meeting is adjourned. Have a happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
We'll see you all next year.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone.
Take care.
Good
All
night.
right.
Yeah. See you later.